No one could surpass the heroine in either beauty or wealth. She had always been a busy lady and a person who was incapable of sleeping anywhere. Drawing everyone's attention, it was impossible to be happy. The girl felt rather strange. Without opening her eyes, the beauty realizes that she has fallen asleep. Trying to open her eyes, the blonde suddenly realizes that something is going wrong. I don't know when the girl fell asleep. Sounds more like some kind of nonsense. The body feels heavy, but the shouting around makes it worse. The servants speak of a lady who is waking up, so you should hold her hands and feet. The noise crawls into my ears, curling them into a tube. Once the blonde is up, she is seated on the bed in a comfortable position, and the maids flank her from all sides, beginning to make her beautiful. Manicures, pedicures, and hair are some of the most important things. Trying to turn her head and resist, the girl is interrupted. One of the maids asks her not to fidget, as there's a good chance of ruining the beautiful makeup. Belle doesn't want to hear a word. Calming down so as not to cause much trouble, the Virgo builds up a chain of events that happened. The last flashback shows the heroine drinking tea. Obviously, something's been spiked in there. The drink was brought by a merchant with whom the lady is cooperating. Maybe someone drugged her or something, but how dare they do that to the daughter of the most powerful family to kidnap? The maids are the people she hired. Changing the subject, the girl asks why the wings of her nose are drawn differently than usual. She would look too fragile, she said. The brunette decides to argue absolutely nothing. She stutters, but one moment could have saved her. There are no problems in such a simple makeup look, so everything will look pretty enough. The two girls immediately pulled up a large, full-length mirror for a better view. All requests and orders of the mistress must be obeyed without any disobedience. A beautiful blonde lady with hair curled according to the latest fashion looked at the beauty from the reflection. The lovely makeup emphasized her expressive green eyes as well as her plump lips. Slightly missing the point, the girl declares that it's not her type at all, but as she looks closer at the details, she changes her mind. It's quite normal for her to come to the castle looking like this. The self-love is unusually quickly interrupted. His gaze drops to his wrist, which is empty. It's immediately clear that something has gone wrong, and in the wrong direction. Turning her head to the other people in the room, who are already diligently pretending to be very busy or in an urgent hurry to get somewhere, the lady asks where her magical communicator is. He just disappeared. I don't want to throw a tantrum so as not to spoil everyone around me. However, this thing is pretty valuable for a beauty. Folding her arms across her chest in a belligerent gesture, the girl asks what the servants are up to. She was made up like a doll and also dressed to match her new look. I hate to even mention that she never acts like this. All without shutting up, Mercedia agrees that it does look beautiful, but it's not her type. The white dress with lots of lace is clearly not the right one. This kind of attire is more like a wedding dress that a mother might have picked out. The realization comes literally in the same second. The protagonist puts 2 plus 2 together and raises a stunned look. She sits in the middle of the huge hall, while the maids dart around as if engaged in some unpretentious preparation for a celebration that will not take place. One of the girls stepping aside, but still holding the comb in her hands, confirms the lady's thoughts. She's right about every single word. The ward says that Sasha is having a wedding. Words, like something incredibly heavy, pressed down with their weight, trying to ruin everything. There is no such thing, and it seems as if none of this is true. Trying not to cry, or at least hold back her outburst of mad anger, the girl doesn't understand why she's being set such a trap. She's gone to everything for so long, building a career and accomplishing so much, and now it's all going to be ruined. Weddings seem to be the most treacherous event. Perhaps any other individual would be happy about this, as such an event with a loved one with a good status is just a dream. However, it is definitely not for a young lady. Immediately, not a second, the heroine decides to take at least some action to save herself and her reputation. Jumping up, she hears cries of apprehension for her dress, and likewise about not having shoes on. These are completely unimportant little things. Lifting her hem, the beauty hurries in the opposite direction. Everyone is afraid she'll trip, but even if there's a chance of falling, nothing will happen, because there's a carpet right under her feet. I don't care about anything except one single thing. The strange sensation doesn't leave, intending to take over my entire gut, because the slight jiggling seemed odd from the start. Sasha, of course, guessed that her parents would do something to marry her off, but some things are getting out of hand. Pulling the curtains, the lady swings open the window to see everything going on. No longer hiding her thoughts, the heroine begins to speak out loud, as if to herself. Even if this is all true, it can be avoided, however. She falls silent, faltering half a word. Eyes widening with surprise. Standing so small, the beauty sees only water in front of her. Glistening in the sun's blue hues, it seems to be beckoning to dive in and cool off. The panoramic window shows all the sorrow and ambiguity of the situation one has managed to get into. Putting her palms against the window, she doesn't understand what it is and how she happened to be on the ship. All luck seemed to leave the princess in an instant, leaving no chance for a meaningful escape. His eyes, as well as his mind, clouded over. A maiden can't escape being in the middle of the ocean. She doesn't know exactly where she is, and it messes up the whole situation. Perhaps the landmass is so remote that it would be unrealistic. The maid, finally catching up with her mistress, begins to try to calm her down, but no arguments have any effect. Miss puts her hand to her head, unwilling to listen to anything, asking who is her soulmate. Without choosing her expressions, the lady keeps asking where is the man she is destined to marry. He's probably on a ship somewhere, but the maid's only response is to ask him to be careful what he says. Mercedia is one of the most famous girls in the empire. No one can resist her beauty, so such a gift amazes and attracts absolutely everyone around. Virgo is the only daughter of Sasha's family. It wasn't her background that made the lady famous, it was her behavior. She turns to the man, saying that if he's not very good, then he should have learned at least some techniques. According to him, he's not good at either, which is frustrating. The blonde can't take the pressure and seems to flare up with anger, or maybe embarrassment. My cheeks turn red, because everything said was said in the company of other people in the middle of the hall, after which everyone laughs. Already at home, Sasha admitted to herself that she said all this because the guy acted as if he had done something great, even though the couple had spent only one night together. The young man fled abroad, for everyone dubbed him a man who is bad at everything. As a result, all the men who didn't succeed in staying with Mercedia were looking for someone more compliant. Their pride would be shattered if they took even one step towards the girl, but the beauty wanted to be just that. I didn't even want to remember some moments from my personal biography. The rest of us had no idea what it was like to eat and look at the nasty faces of the interlocutors after everything that had happened. Surely the groom is just as weird as the rest of us. Who will say he's the best, or conversely, that money solves everything? Once again, making her escape, the girl leaves the maids who are trying to apprehend her. The door is visible somewhere in the distance. It won't be long before we can escape. Whoever dares to touch her will deeply regret it, for the lady intends to make a man forever reluctant to marry her. The entrance opens, emitting a characteristically loud popping sound. The beauty looks quite furious because the whole situation literally pisses her off, not giving any peace. She screams, asking who is the guy. His gaze goes somewhere upward while his mouth closes on its own. The blonde realizes someone is standing right next to her. The red-haired young man makes no sound and clearly has no intention of saying anything. Even without any clue, it's clear who he is and why he's here. As if shedding her obsession, the maiden freezes, realizing that something is wrong here. The cold expression on her face was like dipping her face into a cold bath, freezing her with her gaze. A mistake has been made, and it was made by the mother who chose the husband. Trying not to say anything unnecessary, the lady wonders what this man is doing here. Still without changing his face, the young man is no longer silent, but asks only a simple question. What? He is being blatantly stared at by a person who is clearly out of her mind, and it can't help but be titillating. This man is a naval admiral. Demetrius Cyprian is a famous hero of the Empire's war, even if he is quite young. All around him are well aware of all his exploits and accomplishments. After attaining the rank of admiral, he did not lose a single battle. All the rumors sound more like tall tales, but it is said that without him, the war on the borders would not have ended to this day. To the whole biography, we can add the fact that the man is not married. I hate to admit it, however it is true, and he is Mercedia's fiancé. The girl builds an even angrier expression on her face, realizing the situation. This piece of ice is going to be her husband. Obviously, this will happen very soon, and this event will be extremely difficult to avoid. The guy doesn't look too happy about it, and it's noticeable without even asking anything. Still unable to digest the whole situation, the maiden is silently angry. His eyebrows furrowed, and his eyes exuded intense fire. She intends to break the engagement, but finding a way will be quite difficult. To begin with, the best solution becomes to try to play a joke on the person. Putting on a friendly pretend expression, the lady asks what a busybody like the Admiral is doing here. He must be on some sort of regular assignment. Confrontation ensured. The most beautiful lady, Mercedes Sasha, who is determined to do anything to turn things around in her favor, is already launching her mental attack. It's not that simple, for on the other side is the Empire's greatest military hero, Demetrius Kypros. He is no less determined, although he may not fully realize the gravity of the situation. Such statuses are known to everyone because the couple themselves chose them, despite the whole situation. It sounds quite majestic, however, the people around behind their backs call them something completely different. The blonde is the Empire's top bitch, and the red-headed young man is the Empire's top asshole. These names aren't convoluted, however, with all the data of the youngsters are quite real and valid. Continuing to scowl, Mercedes is still cursing everyone who arranged this. It's not clear who exactly came up with that idea, but it's just not possible. This is the most ridiculous and stupid thing that could have ever happened to her. Thoughts are interrupted by a distinctive grinding sound. A hand in a white glove disappears from view, and then reaches for the sheath of the weapon, about to be pulled from its sheath. Only a split second passes, as the long silver blade is only a few centimeters away from the face and neck of the girl, who is in mild shock. It all happens rather spontaneously, without any preconditions. There's no time to think about either at all, so the beauty just casts her eyes down somewhere, trying to fumble for at least something of self-defense. Some voice from behind starts calling out to the young miss, trying to ask what's wrong and why strange noises are being heard. Sasha doesn't have any strength or consideration to respond, and she just continues to stand there as if stumped. The man is out of sorts. You can tell right away. He starts the conversation because he didn't understand who invited him here and in what way. Perhaps if he succeeds in killing his future wife, he will be released and can go back. The voice sounds colder than ever as the lady orders her to step away from her. She too is a victim, even if it is hard to imagine, with all the data she is given. There's no point in continuing this conversation, but it's worth a try, albeit a little later. His gaze falters, and then his eyes turn the other way while the blade is still right at his face, as if warning. The couple turns to the window, which is in the form of a porthole, like on ships. Water still fills the space, making it clear that there will be no indulgences. There's nowhere to run, and desire alone can't help. This is the highest deck on the ship, and such news is not the best news in this world. Even if he decides to do a stray act and jump into the water, it still won't work. This is not a normal plan. The eyes shift again, as if on their own, to the brunette standing a step away from the lady. A strange feeling lingers, like there's something wrong with this guy. That's certainly not what a man who wants to marry someone looks like. Trying to provoke her thoughts, the blonde intends to find out the questions that interest her. One of them is why on earth did the guy bare his sword without any warning, thus taking the girl by surprise. This behavior is beyond embarrassing. The Admiral is obviously not even thinking about what exactly his answer should be. He turns his head in the opposite direction. Already heading for the door, the man finally says something. According to him, he will reflect on this after he has killed everyone on the ship. The blonde's face turns purple with anger because the interlocutor has obviously lost his mind. Calming down a bit, remembering to keep her cool, the beauty realizes that the man is not lying. If need be, this guy can finish off even his own soldiers. There's no way she's backing out right now. The maiden stammered out something she wanted to talk about, but was interrupted at the half-word. The plan falls apart before his eyes because the young man turns sharply to the side. It's all going the wrong way. In her thoughts, Mercedes repeats to herself that everything will be okay. She is interrupted by a voice over the loudspeaker announcing that Plan A has been forgotten, which means it's time to move on to Plan B for results. The voice still won't shut up, ordering him to make sure all the passengers on the ship put on their masks. The whole thing is gaining momentum because it's not clear why gas masks are in free space. Redhead suddenly freezes, then alerts that it's a soporific gas. Sasha still can't accept her fate. It's not clear who does normal in fun weddings like this. The man turns around, and without wasting a second, runs towards the exit, hoping for some kind of rescue. Turning her head, the girl is indignant, for this rogue has already had time to give a run for his money. The heroine should not delay, because after everything that happens, she may fall asleep like everyone else, thus worsening the situation. Pulling herself together, she follows suit and begins her run. desperation makes you want to desperately swear with all your might or yell at everyone around you. Putting her hand to her mouth, the girl is angry that the dress is so heavy. She wished things were different and much simpler. With no intention of stopping, the beauty believes in her own strength until one unexpected moment. Her legs braid themselves, and then the heroine stumbles over her own dress, which has been decided to let go. The blonde is already in flight, one step away from the fall that a collision with the deck floor would bring. A wild scream fills the room. Something had gone wrong again. Rising from the ground, the beauty frantically looks around, making sure no one has seen her. It would have been impossible to bear such shame if even a single soul had noticed all that was happening. Things seem ambiguous, as pleas have not been answered. Spotting such a moment, the guy turns his head and even stops to capture the whole moment in the best possible way. The heroine shakes off her dress, but then notices the figure of a man slowly approaching Mercedia. The admiral had seen everything that was happening, and it couldn't be true. Such shame seems unforgettable. Drawing ever closer, inevitably catching up to his target, Demetrius reaches out and then grabs Sasha's calf. Such actions are not justified in any way, but they make a lot of things clear. Picking up the blonde, the guy carries her toward the exit like a log. Such a comparison would be very apt, because that's exactly how the girl feels. I want to cry about hopelessness, but that's not her style at all. Waving her arms around, the lady tries to break free, even if all resistance is not fully effective. A lot of swear words, one after another, fly out of his mouth, trying to ruin everything around him, completely disturbing the groom. After running a good half of the way, the man stops in one place, catching his breath. He notices something right in front of him, and that thing reincarnates absolutely the entire way. Still not letting go of his fiancée, the guy has no way of knowing what to do next. A huge door using dark magic appears in front of the couple, unable to let anyone present out. There's nowhere else to run. After only a few minutes of such silence, the blonde fidgeted, trying to free herself from the strong grip. Hanging upside down is clearly not a beauty's style. She'd prefer something simpler. Finally finding herself on the floor and feeling the ground again, Mercedia is left extremely satisfied. Shifting her gaze somewhere on the door, the lady realizes that even a huge dragon with great strength could be locked in here. Pensive gaze focused on something else. It seems to have the same symbols here as on the magic mechanism in the magic tower. Things are better, as there's enough room to chop up the case with a sword without hitting people. Thoughts disappear, and some kind of turmoil comes over the mind. The gas is still acting up, so the beauty staggers out and leans her hand on the nearby wall. The forces are in such a state, no more. The suspended and uncomfortable feeling prevents you from doing anything, and even the wall doesn't help anymore. There is no more strength, so the girl falls to the floor, making a characteristic sound. My face feels like it's turning red because the gas is getting into my lungs, making it hard to breathe and causing me to fall asleep. My hand reaches for my mouth again to keep me from falling asleep or letting my guard down once more. The blonde continues to curse everyone in the world. Things are no worse for Duke as the man continues to stagger around, aware of what is going on around him. The strength was beginning to leave my body, and it was getting harder by the minute to restrain myself. I want to lie on the floor and forget all my problems. The journey doesn't take long as the couple is already near their destination. The red-haired man, leaning on the door, tries to stay conscious and watch everything happen, keeping his face and hopeful. The only thing left to do is to hold out and fulfill the goal. It only gets worse by the minute as the body weakens, becoming woozy and then dragging itself down. Some strange person came up with this whole game, and now the people around them are suffering. Crying from hopelessness or pain doesn't work, even with all the desire that is still present. His gaze fumbles for something nearby, while his eyes become unusually angry, literally at the same moment. Right on the other side is the female protagonist, who looks back at him with a malevolent stare like a small replica of the man. Such a confrontation seems unusual. Grabbing his face with his hands, the guy screams that it's a punishment to marry a woman like her. However, the lady finds an answer by screaming that she didn't mean it. The lady opens her mouth to continue her angry tirade, but is interrupted. The dizziness catches you off guard, giving you no time to react in any way. The girl realizes that she's probably blacking out again, but she should pull herself together because while she's out, something is bound to happen. I wonder what people's actions will be at a wedding when the bride and groom are emotionless. Redhead apparently feels the tension hanging in the air as well, giving no rest to anyone. So he grabs his throat, trying to loosen his clothes. Making sounds, he realizes it's difficult in this state. The maiden's eyes rounded at everything that was happening. Moments pressurized the brain, preventing proper concentration. For some reason, the groom suddenly became incredibly handsome and attractive. Turning away with obvious hidden annoyance, the girl remarks that she shouldn't have looked at the guy just now. It's a shame that she won't be able to capture this image, because its beauty would like to be admired later. There is no longer any strength to fight. My eyes seem intent on closing on their own, and everything ahead is floating like a bad dream I don't want to watch. The groom's silhouette floats behind. Not even 10 seconds later, the blonde passes out, lying on the floor without any feelings. The admiral nearby leans on the wall with his last strength, but soon follows the advice. My eyes slowly open and immediately stumble into a bright light. The sounds of the wind whipping around are dispersed, blowing against my cheeks. This is the second time Mercedia has woken up like this, and it can't help but be alarming. Her gaze lifts to the sky, and shock catches the girl off guard. Sasha can't believe her eyes, for right above her stretches a dark night sky that makes it clear that it's long past daytime. Feeling the surface, the lady realizes it's a sleeping boat. However, she is not being rocked, which means she's no longer in the open ocean without any warning. The maiden jumps up in a split second. There should be guards everywhere, but not a living soul in sight. Perhaps it's just the shore of a continent without a single servant, but that's very much on the mark. One turbulent thought flickered in my head, keeping me on my toes. There's something wrong here, and the beauty even knows where it might be. We can only believe that the speculation is not true. The place is simply an ordinary island. It is rather somewhere quite far away from normal civilization. Precisely not worth it, the journey promises to be more than interesting. Trying to distract herself from the bad thoughts, the blonde decides to examine the boat they were sent here in. The eye is immediately drawn to some dark thing that is clearly out of place. A military uniform is in hand, and the heroine's face immediately changes from puzzled to angry. She could no longer physically tolerate Demetrius. He has manners, after all. There are more important things than hostility right now. So hesitating slightly, Sasha puts on her cloak, carefully throwing it over her shoulders. Since it's nighttime, that means it took a while to get here. Walking to the end of the boat, the girl found some colorful boxes. They didn't really draw anyone's attention, but any lead at this point was very important. Moving away from the scene and finding the supplies, the maiden realizes that they are most likely survival supplies. Now everything is falling into place, showing why they were dumped here. It's suspiciously quiet, so the lady starts turning her head. It feels like no one else is here, and she herself is trapped in this spacious golden cage with this pile of unsupportable things. During one of these turns, the Duchess notices something in the distance. By putting her hand on it, the lady tries to identify the object. Apparently, there is a huge forest there with lots of wildlife. Looking somewhere in the distance, Beauty remarks that she shouldn't go there. It's completely dark in there, and the branches of the wooded area block the passage inside, making everything even more ominous. It's really too dark in there. In the depths lies the worst of it. The girl is simply too scared to take any action at all. The best solution that will go to help is under no circumstances to not get discouraged. Jumping up and wiping away tears, Mercedia is determined to be strong, so she heads to the other end of the boat. Opening one of the boxes and then the next chest, the heroine hopes to find at least something. One, or at least two, should definitely be in this junk. They are obligated to help in this situation. My hand keeps digging somewhere in the compartment of useless garbage, aka stuff. A hand fumbles for something, and Y retrieves a blank letter. The paper lies meekly in the hands of the new hostess, who will have to read the entire contents. The obvious doesn't seem obvious because the ancestors wanted to convey something through that very thing. Rushing back to her trunk, the blonde hopes to find something more interesting or more valuable. You can't just stop at a piece of mail from an unknown sender. The process is not making any progress despite the fact that the girl has already dug through half of the contents. Returning to the paper, the blonde decides to read what the problem is. The paper said that the Duke had prepared a deserted place for the newlyweds. As soon as they get the good happy news, they will come right away to pick them up. A summer house on the very edge of the map looks like the best option. The girl slowly exhales air, thus trying to calm herself down. A slight indignant smile seemed to loom on the blonde's face. She's clearly angry at everyone around her. No longer in control of herself, the heroine thinks this is all but insane. They all freaked out and came up with the worst plan imaginable in the worst scenarios. What's most interesting is exactly what people meant by good news. It gave the impression that they expected to get a baby on their honeymoon without any problems. Jumping up from her seat as if she'd been scalded, Mercedes starts screaming and swearing, cursing whoever came up with this quest. A calm voice is heard from behind, snickering, recognizing that the girl has a sharp tongue. Freezing, the blonde realizes what a mistake she's made. Not daring to move, she goes through her options, knowing full well whose voice it is and who it belongs to. Trying to calm herself down, the princess becomes more like the quiet smoothness of the water on a lake. She turns her head to face nose to nose with her interlocutor. With his hands at his sides, the man dare not interfere or try to hurt in any way, but he does it without realizing it. Sasha seems quite comfortable with the situation. Throwing her cloak on to make it at least a little warmer, the girl turns away. A guy shouldn't be bothered by the way she talks. In her opinion, there's no one here, which means you can do whatever you want. Belle walks off to the other side of the boat, intent on starting her journey, or at least avoiding such unpleasant company. As she approaches the end of the transport, she jumps off, ending up on the ground. There is nothing but impenetrable sand everywhere, which makes sense since they are on the beach. Ankle-deep feet stuck in the substance, giving the blonde time to ponder what was worth doing. The pain just seems unbearable. It's not clear why the people who shoo her put on high heels if they wanted to send the lady to a desert island. This whole thing is just disgusting. Wearing ugly shoes under a dress isn't forgivable either, so it's worth tolerating even that. A guy interrupts her from her thoughts and holds out his hand, thus throwing the lady into a slight stupor. He seems very handsome, just like that, just standing there in his shirt in the moonlight, which falls in even glare on his face and clothes, illuminating the most important thing. You could capture such a sculpture and then admire it for hours on end. While on guard, the young heroine asks what he wants. He might realistically want to take her hand, but that option seems little realistic. The young man stiffens, squinting his eyes. Smirking, it's as if the red-headed man is bitching at Mercedes, despite all her merits. As it turns out, she does have a drop of self-esteem and dignity after all, which seems extremely odd to him. After a second, the admiral turns around and walks away, retracing his steps, leaving footprints in the sand. Sasha begins to shout, resenting his behavior, to which she receives another barb that takes the soul. He really hopes there's a conscience left, because it's not hard to do any harm at all. Just take a small neck and break it with your bare hands. An unkind fire glows in his eyes, alerting him to danger. The girl freezes for a second, standing there speechless. She wants to launch into her angry tirade, but it's too like just standing there trying to process everything that happened just a second ago. Shrieking, the blonde starts screaming that the interlocutor is threatening her, to which the latter snorts, saying that she is just inattentive listening and nothing of the sort has happened. She should reflect on her behavior. After all the yelling, the red-headed man turns back towards the girl. She can't shut up, and it's taking its toll on my already frayed nerves. The girl keeps resenting it. She's not a cow or a pig to be called that. It would be worse to be called an animal, but it's pretty much the same thing in that sense. Suddenly it reaches her, and she asks if he knows her name. Silence, like a smokescreen, hangs between the pair, finding a tangible substance in the air. Freezing, the beauty can't cover her mouth in surprise. He really doesn't know her name. Trying to reach out, all attempts fail. Virgo asks about news in aristocratic society, or MSMs, which he apparently doesn't use. You can tell by his reaction that the guy doesn't even have any friends. Roughly interrupting the blonde half-heartedly, the young man asks how her intentions are about marrying him. He can't wait to find out what she's up to in order to prevent the consequences. A new shout goes up all over the island, for the lady is not going to get married. Stomping her feet and waving her arms in passing, the girl resents her kidnapping, which has cost her dearly. But if she had planned the whole thing, she wouldn't have disturbed herself and gassed herself. Without stopping to gape indignantly, the heroine asks for an answer to her one fairly simple question. It's important for her to know if he wants to get married, and a pushback answer of no flies off his lips. Virgo does not appear to be a person who is happy in this position. She doesn't look like someone who enjoys fooling people. Her gaze involuntarily freezes, focusing on the groom. There's definitely something wrong with this man. Maybe in his head he's having a confrontation right now, and afterward he'll actually kill his soulmate. The strangest scenario that could happen is a peaceful resolution. The young man says that it doesn't matter, and then, turning around, is about to leave the scene. Already leaving, the guy only hears another scream behind him. The protagonist continues to tread the ground, throwing obscene words in her husband's direction, showering him with compliments. Anger is still as bright a note expressed in the lady's emotions. Demetrius agrees with her, saying that she hadn't planned it, but then she should go with him if she doesn't want to spend the next night by the sea. The girl squatted down and removed her heels, in order to move around barefoot. She asks about the map and where the cabin is. It's easier for the guy to just agree, confirming that there is a map and the lodge is nearby. The next question is more complex, but no less important for young people. We need to figure out how to get out of here. Perhaps the young man has some means of communication. The admiral turns around, looking at his soulmate like she's crazy. Perhaps she thought the one had gotten out of some jungle, but it wasn't all that. It was just primitively weird. Raising her hand, her gaze flicks to her wrist. On it is a magical communicator in the form of a brightly colored bracelet, sparkling in the sun. Reaching out with his other hand, the man immediately presses the button he wants, letting the device start working. After a second, bright lights come on, and then a touchpad appears to say there's no access area here. All the couple has is supplies on the boat and 0 servants. You could run away, but that's unrealistic, so the best solution would be to please your parents. They, like the rest of the empire, consider them rabbits. Stammering, the beauty interjects, asking what other results they should make people happy with. The realization hit at that very second, because a baby was what was needed. They must have all lost their minds there, if they have the guts to set such idiotic conditions for people who almost don't know each other. The guy is already going somewhere, hefting the bag of supplies on his shoulders, but turns around to say something. The lady should go after him, but as it is, he can't get her to work. Her gaze involuntarily drops to her clothes. The view is not that bad, and maybe even attractive, however not for carrying a large load. A snow-white dress will be hopelessly ruined in a crash. Finally silent, the girl follows the handsome man. She would definitely throw a tantrum if her soulmate made her carry anything, especially heavy luggage with unnecessary items. A small house with white walls can be seen in the distance. Lanterns glow from somewhere near the entrance, showing exactly where to go in order to get to the right place. The blonde immediately became active as soon as she saw the house. My eyes widened maniacally because the manor must have a comfortable bed and a proper bathroom and food. Running up to the door, the girl pushes it open with all her might and then swings it open. There should be some magical artifacts around here somewhere for cleaning clothes and stuff. While near the main staircase in the lobby, the young lady begins to realize the deplorability of the situation she has gotten herself into. My eyes freeze and then start frantically running around the interior, trying to latch onto at least something. A man is heard yelling about the poor interior because all the walls were dirty, just like the windows. The husband does not react in any way because he is tired of this person, having spent only 24 hours with her. Too much dramatization of the moments. The Empire began creating magical artifacts after surviving 2 large-scale wars. Now, no one can live without them, as they perform simple things like building houses or even lighting without any problems. There are so many weird features or trinkets designed to make them a reality. A prime example is the artifact that flushes the toilet in the restroom, making life a little easier. The people of the Empire no longer suffer the loss of any information and are proud to call themselves a civilized society. Now none of them can imagine their lives without all sorts of useful stuff. Mercedes Sasha is at the heart of civilization and this circle. It is easiest for her to get any information without any data or time freezes. She is the daughter of the chief sage and Duke Isaac Sasha, who wields a magical tower. This build supplies everyone around it with the right tools and artifacts, and thus helps with everything. It's very difficult for a girl to accept the new reality. After her great past, she's now just plain stuck on this island without any of the benefits of civilization, and with this obnoxious guy. A familiar, nasty voice pulls me out of my thoughts. The red-haired man calls out to the lady, asking if she will continue to stand in one place. She gets in the way, not giving him a pass, thus ruining everything. Waving her curls, the lady continues to ask a million incomprehensible questions. It turns out the man just wants to say that she has to stand on that wooden floor without even knowing where it was delivered from. Seeing no problem, The admiral offers to put on the shoes his wife took off outside due to discomfort. Outraged by this insolence, the blonde screams that she can't wear the same shoes. She has absolutely no one who understands her, and she's here all alone, all alone. A tear rolls down my cheek. She doesn't think she is an overly dramatic person, but to other people, a different picture is obviously emerging. There seems to be no choice at all, so the girl bends over and then squats down. She should put on her old shoes, because it's a real principle to violate. Already putting on the second shoe, the beauty notices a figure approaching nearby. The maiden involuntarily looks up, trying to focus, already knowing full well who it is. Getting up from her knees, the blonde wants to ask something and find out what the whole situation is about. However, the man just walks by as if she has become invisible to the others. The heroine freezes, already covered in red blotches. This man saw Mercedia herself barefoot and just walked by like that. I wonder how long she'll have to stay here before they let her go. Looking out of the door, the lady starts shouting in the wake of her departing husband, asking where he is going. Obviously he needed luggage, so immediately the road began now. It's unbelievable, because this man is sneaking off again, about to dump Sasha. You have to be in control, and then things will go the way the lady wants them to go. The heroine screams, asking if he wants to leave her here alone, thus ruining everything, but she doesn't hear a coherent answer. He's running too fast and is already somewhere completely across the road. The conversation is broken, but things will inevitably go back to normal, changing everything back to the way it was. With her arms at her sides, the girl stares angrily toward the sea. I can't believe this is happening to her. This whole thing is really outrageous. Normally, the maids would have already lined up to greet Mercedia, but that didn't happen here. You could get top-notch skincare from professionals. A sad look flickered somewhere off to the side. Past lives inevitably peeked in the memories. The girl would now be changing into the nightgown Louise had prepared. It's something she could dream of. A slight smile slips across his face, and this time it's not guile, but simple happiness. The lady really can't wait to get home and get her all back in the way it should be. They all must have cooperated with the wedding planner as they were in the preparations. The unnecessary accusations can significantly damage the reputation, so the best solution is to pretend to be fooled and try to forget everything that happened. The maids will pretend everything is fine, going about their normal business, and if the heroine refuses to get smarter, she'll definitely do what she should without any interruptions. Sasha decides not to torture herself with unnecessary thoughts, so now it is worth looking around the house in which to live. It is indeed very dirty and weird. However, the interior looks pretty decent. You can spend at least a few days here for starters. Moving farther down the corridor, the maiden stops now, and then near some paintings or exhibits that look more like unfortunate items for a museum show. The strange purple creature looks just awful. Next comes the second floor, which certainly can't be last in line. Judging by the map and layout, there should be sleeping quarters there, so it's worth a visit too. Everything can be done a little later. No more than 30 minutes passes. However, that is enough time to become overwhelmed and tired. Wiping her forehead as if wiping away sweat, the beauty exhales cold air. Having done a week's worth of exercise, she couldn't be envied. The paintings and sculptures are really quite authentic. It would be great to have the time or desire to explore things and even touch things later. It's incredibly cool to understand and experience it all firsthand. There's just one rather odd thing here that's hard to understand. The interior of this estate evokes a strange feeling. It's like he's emphasizing how unreliable this house is by showing all the flaws. The thoughts are mesmerizing, throwing up new ideas about what was going on here. However, attention is drawn to the sounds and noise near the front door. It doesn't take even a moment's hesitation to realize who it is and why he has come. The lad once again returned to the manor with the last chest. It's heavy, so the man is breathing hard. The box goes into the same pile where the rest of the bags, totes, and chests with everything you need to live are already lying. It had only been a little while, but this man had managed to haul all that cargo off the ship all by himself, without anyone else's help. Sometimes it feels like the groom is a robot or worse, but the thought of not having to go out again is obviously gratifying. It is not necessary to think about everything that is happening too seriously or to cry over the fact that young people have only one unknown waiting for them. It would be strange if this were not a reality. His head turns toward the young man who is warming up. Hate to admit it, but Mercedia glances over, realizing that the man is indeed very handsome. His body is in good shape and looks amazing, as does everything else in general. Her cheeks light up scarlet. If this was posted by a magical Instagram or Facebook, a virgin would use it as an eye-pleaser. It was clear that she would have retained every picture and wouldn't have strayed from the tablet. Finally completing his mini-exercise, the young man fixes his hair and asks how things are going. He sneers again, implying a bad case, for he thinks the beauty is idle. Anger is always hard to contain, especially around someone like this upstart. The lady states that she is not loitering, but looking around the house, trying to figure out what's what and how they can continue to live here and generally be here. The young man freezes, then begins his interrogation. He asks if they found anything that can be used as a weapon, or, for example, a defense system. It might be nice if there are secret passageways here in case of attack, or just for fun. The girl stops frowning and then coughs. She asks if her husband is going to war. It is a joke, and the maiden realizes that he is an admiral. However, this is over the top and over the top. As if trying to bring out an emotion, the beauty snickers, calling him a man with strange behavior, thus making the groom angry. Frowning his eyebrows and trying not to snap, the man reminds him that my lady is stuck on this island with him and has no right to talk about him like that. Pretending to laugh, the lady says she can see how much they want to marry her. Turning away from her interlocutor, the redhead mockingly interjects if she meant herself. The screams are once again deafening, giving no time to recover, as the blonde once again claims that she would never want to get married herself. Already realizing the complexity of the situation, Mercedia no longer tries to resist 100%. Apparently, the couple is marooned on the island, which means the wedding will take place under any circumstances. She doesn't have to explain everything on her fingers. Turning his head, the guy squints incredulously again. He doesn't like what's going on, but he can't get away with it. As weird as it sounds, the girl's right. After a second, the man picks up something from the floor and then tosses the red pouch right into the hands of his interlocutor, who is puzzled. She should take the thing, but the woman asks what's in it. Carefully taking the bundle and then opening the wrapping, the maiden notices the beautiful pink shoes with a not-so-big heel. This can't help but feel good, as there is at least some compensation. Without missing a moment of banter, the man remarks that it seems that someone can't seem to get around without their house shoes. It's kind of weird, but it's easier to get shoes than it is to change habits. A new batch of indignation inevitably pours over a guy who didn't even expect to hear anything. Mercedia doesn't understand who even wears pink shoes under an off-white dress. Her husband's face turns purple with anger, while he tries to keep his expression as calm as possible. The girl keeps going on and on about how this kind of thing is totally out of fashion. Survival on a deserted island equals a score of 1. It's going to be difficult. Without shutting up, Sasha states that this house was built with an open structure. This is dug up from a bygone era, and the trend is outdated. Rather, it was built over 3 years ago, thus sealing its fate in the future for visitors. As if cutting off from his shoulder, the red-headed man suddenly says that the estate was built less than half a year ago, which is a pretty small amount of time even for someone not as advanced as him. There is absolutely nothing here that matches the perfect and new style. It cannot but be strange, because someone bought and built this house far away from everyone, not for the sake of so to equip it, and then spoil the mood of vacationers for the rest of the year. If someone starts such a business, and on a desert island, he certainly wouldn't use a design from 3 years ago. The man agrees and nods because he has nothing more to say, even though he doesn't agree with all the expressions. Thoughts are rushing through my head in a strong stream, but none of the necessary and really important ones are visible here. Perhaps people had other reasons besides getting married and having a baby. That way it would work. Turning his head away, Demetrius disagrees. After the inspection, we can say that the defensive structure of the mansion is in a rather damaged state, or rather, it is absent at all. They had only one goal, and it had already been voiced. I don't want any slander, and after all the arguments made, it's clear that it's okay. However, they still kidnapped the couple, which means there was a strange motive here that is not explained in any way, because no one warned anyone. The man suddenly hears or sees something, and so he takes off from his seat, already at the ready. The running is not too fast, but it makes absolutely nothing of an understandable situation. The girl yells something from behind, asking what's wrong and what's the rush. Putting her palm to her face, the blonde tries to figure out what she should do first. It can't be soporific gas again, as there is absolutely no good reason for it this time. The guy gets to a certain spot and then stops like a halt. The woman doesn't calculate her speed and so crashes right into the back of her husband, who doesn't react to anything. The distinctive scent of roses wafts around. The fragrance is incredible, but also highly irritating. A room with a huge heart-shaped bed opens up right in front of the couple. All the pillows fit the atmosphere, just like the interior, which is done all in pink. Flower petals are lying on the bed. Both of them freeze as if bereft of any senses. There seems to be no more ways to surprise them after what they've seen. The bed, which is meant for something more, stands right in front of me, so inviting. It is nothing short of disgusting. The Admiral, not thinking long, slams the door shut with a force that shakes everything around him. Belle bounces back out of range, but that makes absolutely no sense. Anger fills everyone around him, making him squirm. The man runs swiftly toward the exit, clearly not intending to stop there. Suddenly, remembering something, the blonde shouts a question of interest in her wake. It's important for her to know where her clothes are because she doesn't want to stay in a white dress. Starting to run, the lady finally catches up to the guy, stopping him with her hand. He'd gotten those pink slippers somewhere, which meant there had to be some other normal clothes somewhere nearby for sleeping or walking around the house. A minute passes, but there is still no response. Unable to take it all anymore, the blonde grabs Demetrius's head and grabs his hair, screaming about how annoying he is to her. The height difference gets in the way, and the problem is pretty colossal. I have to stand on my toes, but my legs are failing me due to fatigue. There is an unpleasant shivering sensation throughout the body. Intercepting his wife's hand, the guy remarks that she has chosen a great position. She shouldn't think that she's only survived because she can't be killed, because that's not true. At any moment, something can happen that doesn't meet expectations. A hand grips the lady's palm tightly, squeezing in a firm vice, no longer allowing her to go anywhere without permission. That kind of pressure is even more annoying than the guy himself. The lady is definitely not a simple nature, so without missing another opportunity, she smiles, saying that apparently she's only being kept alive to hold a pen. That sounds nice, but only if it were true. Eyes narrowing while the young man tries not to shout back. The nervous tick shows that he is on edge without explaining how that happened. He's already gotten enough trouble with this particular one. Turning away, Demetrius begins to shake off his hand, wiping it diligently as if to show his dislike. Sasha squeals, blaming him for this horrible crime, because the man shouldn't have done it. Unforgivable things, the worst things. The gnashing of teeth slows speech, but the guy still frowns and gives out some sort of retort. He really doesn't understand why he left the lady alive all this time, by his side, without even laying a finger on her. Trying to make a pretty face, the lady declares that her death would be the worst loss to humanity, which is why she is not allowed. The man was taken aback and then turned to the girl. He mockingly asks if the war should end just because of her beauty, or if she is joking while in a good mood. Keeping up with her interlocutor, the blonde fixes her hair, saying that no one knows, because perhaps the war itself would bow down on its knees to a beautiful person like her. The guy isn't even listening to this madam's chatter anymore and is standing somewhere near the exit of the room. He has yet to spend more than one day in the company of his wife, but is already starting to get bored with everything around him. Catching up with her prey in a split second, Mercedia grabs her hands. She doesn't let go and starts a new batch of moralizing. Among all people, he couldn't see anyone more beautiful than this woman. Frowning her eyebrows, Sasha is angry that this man is behaving in this manner, thus ruining everything around him, making things only worse than they were. Still not letting go of the man's head, she finally falls silent, while the Admiral stares angrily somewhere to the side as if picking up the right words. The words cut my ears, but that's what was said. The guy says there were prettier people than his soulmate. Beauty freezes, continuing to stare somewhere in the distance in shock. The screams get 100 times worse and louder, while the girl grabs her shirt and starts shaking Demetrius from side to side. She wants answers and to find out who it was. The jiggling is stopped by a rude retort that had already been said beforehand. The blonde is not to the young man's taste, and therefore he cannot consider her the most beautiful in this white world. Curving her face, the girl uses sarcasm, saying that someone who is his type is very, very lucky. She asks what the person he likes looks like, and the man hesitates. Finally selecting the right epithets to describe her, the guy says that the lady should be small, slender, elegant, and with short snow-white hair and beautiful kind eyes. In fact, it sounds like the lady crawled out of somewhere from the 10th century. Without expressing any sympathy, Mercedes suggests traveling there to find this beautiful man and get married. Already having a prepared answer, the young man says that a woman like Sasha could never be like her, even if reborn. A wave of anger comes over the blonde without a second thought. The main character suddenly starts throwing insults again. The man freezes in surprise, replying that she's crazy to throw such words, and even at him. Not backing down or giving up her position, the lady says her gaze wandered around while the admiral talked about his perfect type. His attraction was especially noticeable when he said about the little one, which meant it was a baby. Resisting, the redhead declares that he saw her when he was still a child, and that's why it's true. Suddenly realizing the whole situation, he asks himself why this conversation is even being had. It is beginning to get even darker in the yard. It is clear that the night has already definitely entered the throne, taking its rights. Beautiful stars spread across the sky in great numbers. In the end, the conversation was quickly concluded, and then both chose their rooms according to their preferences. No one wanted to sleep in the bedroom for love. Demetrius had found a complete layout somewhere, and so he chose the room across from the staircase and Mercedes next to the bathroom. It was a choice that suited them both. They all had their reasons for choosing these accommodations, and it wasn't hard to guess at that. The biggest and most important reason was not to sleep next to each other. Lying on the snow-white bed, already settled in her room, the blonde was thinking about something. Boredom was setting in, however, things were going well. It would have been even better if things had continued like this, but eventually Sasha got hungry, and her stomach started making strange noises, hinting that it was time for dinner. All the girl had managed to get since then was just a cup of healing herbal tea. It was beautiful, but not enough. In this state, even a walk feels like work. A rumbling from his stomach reminded him once again that there was no time to think. This can't happen to the princess herself, however. Everything related to her is cute. Turning her head, the girl decides to leave the room. She needs to find her dinner somehow, and then finally lie down to rest and sleep. Carefully rising from the bed, Mercedes walks over to the mirror, making sure she looks graceful and beautiful. The dress fits perfectly and, most importantly, matches the shoes. Already heading for the exit, the lady noticed that the slight sway in her body remained unchanged. You shouldn't have brought yourself to this state. There was no way to find food herself, which meant it was worth heading to Demetrius. The only thing unclear was how to call him. Perhaps you can just address it by name. Wild noises came from the room, which made the girl jump up, quickly backing away from the room. She hadn't expected this, so she began to tremble more than ever. The door swings open, revealing a head of red hair. The man asks what she's doing here and why she's here. Not listening, the beauty screams, asking what that just was. She wants an explanation, and it better be quick, but the guy states that it's a normal reaction when you hear sounds outside the door. If there was an assassin or an enemy there, then that kind of training would come in handy. The lady freezes, then asks how come the guy thought about there being anyone here but those two. Without expressing any emotion, the young man says he assumed it was Mercedes. Without giving time to think, the admiral asks the same question again, which is already commonplace. He wonders why she came to him. The protagonist rests her arms at her sides, asking if Demetrius has had dinner. She doesn't want to hear a positive answer as it's not fair. The man freezes, interjecting once more. He is suspicious of everyone and everything, so he asks why his wife needs this information. Turning away, the woman lifts her hand, stroking her hair. She didn't mean to say exactly that, since the protagonist had never even set foot in the kitchen. Already not understanding why she needs all this, the lady says she doesn't care, and if the guy doesn't eat, even for 24 hours, she won't care. Showing no emotion, the admiral notes that the one is being dramatic. Words don't match reality because the lady had to give up. She stands by the beautiful apron in the kitchen and stirs something diligently while cooking. There are more things in the world that can make Mercedes even more perfect. This will be the easiest thing to make because you just need to turn on the fire and then it will cook itself. The strange confidence of newbies is always the scariest thing. Putting the skillet on the fire, the girl remembers about a cooking show she was watching. She's sure she can at least make soup since she's watched these shows so many times. After frying the ingredients in the oil next, you should add water, and I think boil it. A chef on a cooking show would definitely have passed out by now due to unprofessionalism. The girl continues to do her thing, realizing that not only is she truly the most beautiful, but she's also making great plans. Now it's time to add the water. The pungent steam starts going in all directions, combining with the hot splashes of oil and water. Demetrius runs over to the table and grabs the girl, covering her with his body. There is just an unreal burning smell coming from the skillet, and also the oil still won't settle down, continuing to sizzle and splatter in all directions. The couple still doesn't move from their seats, watching everything that's going on. It's hard for a man to find decent words and not offend a pretty girl too much. Sasha's eyes widen as the individual tries to figure out what the gimmick is. She did everything strictly according to the recipe and ended up miscalculating, getting results she certainly couldn't have hoped for. Redhead finally retreats away from the lady, starting to literally stutter with anger. He clearly wants to say absolutely everything he's thinking right now. Grabbing the shoulders of her interlocutor, the Admiral begins to question, finding out what she wanted to do with this cooking. It was probably all about suicide or worse. Turning her head away, not wanting to hear anything, though feeling ashamed, the protagonist asks why the guy is so concerned if he was going to kill her even yesterday. Dealing with this particular reality is almost unrealistic. I want to scream or actually kill her, but I have to restrain myself. He exhales air and then says he too wonders why he suddenly has a conscience and is now acting like this. The lady moves farther away. Finally, she is released from the clinging grip, freeing her and giving her at least some air to breathe. Already about to leave to clean up, the man turns abruptly and asks to stand where the girl is standing. Now, he says, she's a kitchen pest and doesn't deserve to cook. Not even 20 minutes pass, however, the beautiful lobsters are already cooking on the grill. They beckon with their scent, which spreads 3 kilometers away, clearly attracted. After a while, the girl is already sitting at the table with her napkin on, so as not to get her clothes dirty. There's a mountain of food in front of her, and she's surprised because it's unrealistic to eat it all for dinner. First up, of course, would be the shrimp, which smells the most appealing. This is one of the princess's favorite dishes, so she's not about to say no. The young man asks why it can't be done as he asks. The ingredients will simply spoil if not eaten in time, and then there's nothing you can do about it. Turning away and back to the person he's talking to, the guy asks what she was even thinking when she made all that mess. The food will soon spoil, so if the lady is not full, she can find a lizard and cook as she sees fit. Rising from her seat, Mercedia calls Demetrius a barbarian while he calls her a kitchen pest. Obviously, that nickname will stick for a long time now. Picking up her fork and knife, Sasha looks at the plate of food. She's got quite a few thoughts to digest faster than she can start eating. The guy fixes his hair and asks what the maiden is staring at food like that for. There may be something in there that she can't eat because other options just aren't being considered. The beauty doesn't give a hint, but after a few minutes, she finally gives out the answer she wants. She says it's just the opposite. Lifting one of the lobsters into the air, the blonde quietly asks how one should eat this thing. Obviously, the woman doesn't even know the name of the dish in question. This reaction could have been quite funny, but instead, the man only sighs doomfully. Surviving in the same place with this girl was going to be even harder than he thought. Starting to peel the shrimp, the guy gets all his hands and clothes dirty, all while wailing about how pathetic it is. If he hadn't killed her, she herself wouldn't have survived 3 days, because she knows absolutely nothing in this life. One of the peeled ones is sent into the girl's mouth, who makes a joyful sound of bliss. She's clearly enjoying the cooking. The young man stares and opens his mouth in astonishment. The lady is definitely accomplishing something with her behavior, but it's all ambiguous because it's hard to figure out. Making an innocent face, the blonde says it doesn't matter, because Demetrius said he's not interested in her because the heroine is not his type. Leaning over, the man moves a little closer, bringing his hand up to wipe the corner of his mouth. If she's not his type, it doesn't mean anything. The guy can do anything he wants, no questions asked, if he wants to. Realizing that the situation is completely in the girl's hands, the individual smiles and then pretends to be indifferent to everything said. A finger dips down to the young man's chest to draw a light, weightless line. She's playing a game she herself started by saying how terrified she is of such a formidable statement. The Admiral tries his best to find the right words, but everything turns out completely different from what he would like. He starts stuttering like a schoolboy and turns purple with anger again. Deciding to get rid of such a crazy woman faster, Demetrius grabs a plate and with the speed of light starts cleaning the lobsters so they can be eaten. The lady next to me just laughs softly. Finally, everything is ready, and then dinner is complete. The only thing left on the table is a mountain of dirty dishes waiting to be done. Almost all of the food was able to be placed in their stomachs so it wouldn't go to waste. Opening the door to the other room, and already in her nightdress, the girl follows somewhere, thinking about how much she ate today. She doesn't really care too much about the problem at hand, so she hums something to herself. Stopping, the beautiful woman thinks about how hard life is without at least one servant. She has to change into her many dresses and nightgowns herself. There are many more things you have to do all by yourself. One of them is closing the curtains before going to bed. It's done rather slowly and lazily because of the large glass. Your gaze is drawn to something outside the window you didn't even intend to look in. Something interesting can be seen in the distance, keeping me on my toes. There is a strong wind outside, whirling the leaves around, but not at all dispersing the clouds that have gathered darkly in the sky, shutting out any notion of the moon and stars. His gaze darted to the cloud, while his thoughts couldn't help but worry. Not so long ago the stars were visible, but now everything has changed, as if completely unnoticed. As she closes the curtains, the heroine notices that everything that is happening is unreasonably driving her into depression. One feels a strained atmosphere that lies like a heavy burden on the soul. Already in bed, the girl is thinking about her fate, realizing that it is necessary to try to get off this island as soon as possible. There's no energy for that right now, so she reaches over to turn off the nightlight. You need a good night's sleep first. No more than an hour passes, after which it begins to rain. The wind is subsiding a bit, but the drops are getting bigger and bigger by the minute. The animals are trying to hide. One of the squirrels notices something in the distance of the forest, so she runs away from the scene, jumping from the tree to the ground. It feels like the weather is being manipulated by someone. The heroine sleeps a sweet sleep. At least in her dreams, she sees something pleasant, as if she is no longer on an obscure island in a depressing environment with one person, but water droplets start dripping on her nose. A second later, it was as if someone was dunking the maiden in a tub of cold water. The drops are no longer tiny, but more like a full-blown shower. It makes you quickly open your eyes in surprise. Jumping up on the spot and then sitting down on the bed, the girl screams what she can, because being in nirvana, she clearly did not expect this turn of events. Calming down a bit, she realizes she can hear the sound of rain as if she were outside. Something is pouring right on top of her like it's water from the sky, even though there's supposed to be a roof and walls. Lifting her gaze, the beauty freezes, staring up into the air in surprise. Directly overhead is an open, dark sky, and rain is dripping down from there, which is most likely a consequence of the cloud that was seen a bit earlier. Getting up, the blonde starts running in the opposite direction, catching up to the door because the downpour is intensifying. She has no way of knowing what's going on or why this is happening to her. The ceiling disappeared somewhere, thus only ruining everything. The hand no longer covers her face because it makes no sense, while the lady holds on to the hem of her dress. She needs to get to the first floor and find a place where the water won't reach. Running next to the stairs, one of the walls suddenly decides to suddenly fall down. The rumble spreads throughout the estate, and the house itself collapses like a building of cards. Another wall follows, while the protagonist is outraged, cursing all those who dared to create such living conditions. It's already more like crazy than normal stuff. Opening another window, the girl realizes that she is attracted to some sounds outside, as if someone is trying to reach out to her to be heard. These are the right thoughts, as a glance finds Demetrius standing just outside the house, calling out to Mercedia. He hopes the lady will decide to approach to discuss the problem and decide what is worth doing. A blonde woman precedes the man, asking if there are raincoats or umbrellas, for example. These things would help a lot in this situation, but they are clearly not here. The answer confirms the speculation. The best solution turns out to be to continue the revision. Walking into the bathroom, the lady yells with a new dose of anger that this place is good for nothing, as even the toilet had its ceiling blown off. Walking towards the exit of the house, both have already lost hope. But remembering something, the girl stops her companion. She reminds me that there's another room that hasn't been checked. The Admiral asks for silence and to get behind him. Grabbing the guy's hair, the girl says that she might die because of this rain, but is reminded that she tried to kill herself with a fire, and that such rain means nothing to soldiers. Still no way behind, the lady reminds us that she's a princess. Already completely soaked, Mercedia has no more intentions of waiting for anything. These clothes are too thin, and even if she had something else, she still wouldn't want to be out in the rain. This behavior is clearly outrageous. First, he makes all these spectacles, pissing the lady off, and then he makes things worse, precisely by not wanting to obey. Already about to continue her tirade, the blonde realizes she may have made a mistake. I shouldn't have drawn attention in a situation like this, or things could go wrong. The word that something might be done to her pops into her head. What can be done in this situation if she is dared to be touched? Gathering all her courage, the maiden tries to keep her face without giving the appearance of being afraid. Maybe if something happens, it makes sense to try to get out. Emotional clutches don't give you time to think about anything. Sasha hasn't met such handsome men before, despite the fact that all the rumors about him are just awful. His body is beautiful, but how would she know about his habits? The girl continues to crumple in thought. If it happened, she wouldn't even notice. The admiral takes off his jacket and throws it over the shoulders of his interlocutor. Pulling the princess out of her thoughts, he asks her to follow him, calling her weak. There was some truth in the words, but not more than 10%. Advancing inside the house, the couple finally gets to the right room. Unlocking the door, they enter the room and then see the hated bed again with a barrier of protection around it. There seems to be no end to the cunning of parents. The water barrier only extends above the bed, so being in different corners of the room is obviously not going to work. If everything is set up this way, then the rain is also created through magic. If that's the case, then Isaac Zass created it. The girl is angry, hoping her father is stuck in yet another confusing error of a new theory. The pair stand silently, contemplating plans for revenge against this man. They will definitely retaliate in some way, because creating such conditions is the worst thing you can wish on a human being. Squeezing through the barrier, the girl sits down on the edge of the blood, just as the admiral did. They both sit in complete silence, hoping the awkwardness will eventually go away. Taking a closer look at the furniture, you can realize that everything is made of the highest quality. It's ridiculous, because in such a worthless mansion, everything is made of the finest materials. Thoughts are interrupted by a heavy noise very close by. Grabbing some nearby item, the man tosses it to the floor next to the bed. There is a broken blue vase lying on the floor that has crashed and suffered this fate. Stuttering fearfully, the beautiful girl asks what's going on, to which she is told that she should have made sure that barrier wasn't banning them inside. Already growing tired of the lady's temper, the young man asks her to stop yelling right in his ear. Not listening to advice, the lady is outraged that after all Demetrius is still complaining. He probably doesn't even know the value of that vase. Approaching, Duchess says she should have thrown something else. A rose appears in the man's hands, which he clutches. Obviously, he had to throw a flower. Swinging again, and without giving his companion a second thought, the young man throws the rose on the floor next to the vase. There isn't as much noise this time around. However, it is extremely disruptive due to the extra movement. The rose is somewhere in the table, digging its thorns into the wood. The wind shakes the flower evenly, leaving droplets on the surface, reminding me of its presence. As he sits down, the guy notices that it's not just inanimate objects that can penetrate him. Grabbing a pillow, the heroine swings around, screaming about how she was right, but she wasn't listened to. Throwing a pillow right in the man's face, the girl goes on to talk about how the man doesn't even think about how difficult it must have been to create something like this. Roses are her favorite flowers, and even they were dealt with appropriately. As the fight continued, the blonde lamented how things had turned out. He has no sense of beauty, and thus ruins everything with his actions for those around him, and even the lady herself. The pillow flies, trying to hit his face, but only succeeds in hitting his back. Anger takes over the mind, giving no rest because it's incomprehensible how a man can treat things like that. It is impossible that this person shows no interest at all. The girl is only wearing her pajamas, and they're soaking wet. He can't be disinterested, not even a little bit. It's just not possible, even if the heroine is not the groom's type. There's gotta be at least some leads. Turning to the side to get some protection, the young man asks him to listen and not continue with such primitive matters. Grabbing Mercedia's wrists, he tries to pull her back at least a few centimeters or hold her back. She should calm down and reflect on her misbehavior. Spreading his arms in different directions, the man did not take into account only one point, and that is that now the girl is sitting right on top of him, as well as already almost in a lying position due to the fact that she cannot move. The young people are separated only by the pillow that lies between them, but their faces are impermissibly close. A warm breath seems to skim the young man's face, and the same goes in return. Pulling back a little, the girl stares with huge eyes that in their gaze express absolutely nothing good towards the person lying next to her. She's gathering power to make things worse. Grasping the object once more, she launches another attack. She thinks the admiral is just scared, so she uses force on such a fragile individual to even the score. Calling his name, Demetrius orders him off. The screams and pleading make you freeze, but only for a few seconds. Already about to continue, the princess is interrupted. The guy says the blonde should pay attention to what she's even sitting on right now. A little unsure of what the problem is, the beauty lowers her gaze, realizing the situation they are in. Things are picking up, making it clear that this awkwardness isn't going anywhere else. Sasha got too carried away. Turning his face somewhere to the side, the man remarks that it's crushing to see the princess in such a provocative way. Her cheeks are covered in purple spots, letting her know that a reaction has been set in motion. Freezing, the lady suddenly realizes the significance of the words just spoken. She doesn't have any extra thoughts about everything that's going on, but she tries to make innocent eyes so she won't be blamed. Only a few seconds pass, but the girl doesn't take any action, so the guy hurriedly throws her off, repeating about how he's already asked her to get off him more than once. The situation does not improve in any way, as Demetrius is now hovering over Mercedia, who is staring at the young man with darting eyes. She hadn't expected that a normal impulse would bring her to such a state, thus making things worse all around. Pretending she had nothing to do with it, the blonde just tries to turn away and play innocent to get away from her. She doesn't want to have to listen to all kinds of teasing for the next week or more. The couple continues to stare into each other's eyes in silence, saying nothing. The silence drags on obscenely, for more than a few minutes, thus making one wonder if they really feel nothing for each other. The brunette pulls away slightly, thus moving to the side. Her cheeks remain still as red due to embarrassment that is usually unavailable. The guy averts his gaze, cursing quietly to himself. They remain in this position, not daring to do anything, but the silence is interrupted by the blonde reminding them of something. If a man is still going to do something, he should make sure he is comfortable. Laughing a little, the girl asks, for starters, to release her wrists, because the admiral has squeezed them even harder, thus crushing them. The pain isn't severe, but it makes absolutely no difference. The realization comes over the companion in a light wave. Jumping up from her seat, Demetrius steps back, resenting the situation, saying she shouldn't get her hopes up that they would ever get beyond this point and do something. Sitting up on the bed, the lady asks what this strange reaction is. Continuing her teasing, Princess says the guy looks like he just had a bear hug. Still also unresponsive, the man in turn asks to finally get dressed, or at least cover up so he doesn't have to watch. There's no end to the confrontation. There is nothing here for the lady to change into, because even the cloak that was given is already wet. Switching to screaming, the young man asks to cover the ugly body, to which he receives a shock in the eyes of the interlocutor. Already frankly unable to stand it, the girl moves closer to her husband, asking who here has a more perfect body, literally poking him in the face, to which she is asked to stay back. The man has already given 2 warnings, however it's not working. The best solution is to use force again. The guy takes the blanket and rolls it up into a cocoon, shoving Sasha inside so she won't try anything else. A noise draws their attention, and the admiral decides they are under attack. It all sounds more like absurdity. Lacking the resources to speak with all freedom, the princess denies, for it is all untrue, and no attacks are imminent. The situation is more like paranoia. Mado's mirror appears in front of the couple in all its glory. It flies and swirls around the bed like a weightless thing without any news on the screen. That leaves only one thing unclear and a great many questions. It is not clear what the mirror forgot on this particular island and on this particular estate. Some news is so important that it will be announced this way.